There's a sense of. We'll call this meeting of the Onekama Township Planning Commission to order at 7:01. Begin with the pledge of allegiance. If you'd all please stand. Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will begin introducing the commissioners. We could start over here on my right.
Chris Ford, Planning Commission member. Rob Johnson, Planning Commission member.
Deanna Hunt.
Dave Wallace, Chair.
Cindy Wambackler, Board of Trustee person to the Planning Commission.
And I'm Michelle Swanson, the recording secretary.
Thank you. Approve and amend the agenda. Are there? I have one. I'd like to add number 6, PPI. Anyone else have any? I looked through the township board minutes and I didn't see any other notes that were directed my way. There are no other amendments. The agenda will stand approved as amended. Minutes from October. I believe it's October 2nd.
September.
I believe it's we had a meeting October 17th. That sound right, Cindy? Mhm.
Yeah, because I was looking for the October minutes to add to the.
Yeah, I don't think I did, so.
You did not have a meeting in October because we were taking our training.
Oh, that's right.
That's. I thought,
No, I thought that was November.
November one got canceled.
no, November got canceled because of lack of business.
Yeah, the
But-
training started on October 3rd and we did.
It was all of October and one in November. And those were
So
Thursday
these are
nights.
the correct.
That's right.
Okay.
Because we wouldn't have had a quorum because there were 3 of us
Right.
taking the citizen plan. Oh, quorums, yeah. I
Okay.
wasn't going, geez.
Then we won't approve any minutes from October 17th.
What about the September ones?
Then I guess it is September, because that's why we
We
didn't
haven't met,
approve. That's why we,
Yeah, that would have been
Okay.
That was
September
my error. I
19th.
could have included the September in the packet, but I was confused too.
Just change that to September 19th.
Yes.
I want to take.
any additions or corrections? So
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the September 19th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Public comment. On pretty much anything. Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sherry Miller. I'm a township resident. And I came to learn more about the planning commission.
Can you spell your name for me? Your first name?
Sherry, Sherri.
I would have gotten it wrong.
Sorry for being late.
No.
And I heard there might be a volunteer position for a township representative in the planning commission. And I would like to follow up and look into that and responsibilities too. Don't have to do it right now.
Now, is that? My
I might
wife,
be cuckoo, but
is that with the League of Women Voters? Is that what? Or is that something else?
That's something different.
this is something we can look into.
A township representative, and I have not heard of that, but
I just heard of it. I haven't found much on it yet, so.
we will inquire.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for coming out on such a lovely evening.
There's an ugly sweater party next door. Also, I don't always dress this way.
All right. We will move ahead. Tonight is mostly a discussion night on some housekeeping issues that we wish to look into perhaps as needed. And we'll begin with a discussion of the accessory building sizes between the ag zoning district and the rural residential zones. This item came before us, a gentleman on Preston Beach Road had about a 20-acre parcel. He leases 5 acres and has the other 15. And by right in his zoning classification, RR2, he's allowed two 1,200 square foot accessory buildings on his property. He desired to put up one 2,400 square foot accessory building. In order to do that, it's necessary for him to either get us to change the zoning ordinance or to ask for a variance from the ZBA. Now, he chose the variance route, which he received. And, you know, I admit I do sit on the ZBA, and it was kind of a head scratcher. You know, 2 buildings, 1 building, same square footage, what's probably the clincher for me is the amount of acreage he had. If it was an RR2 on a 3/4 acre lot in the middle of a resort subdivision, a 2,400 square foot building might not look so good, but with proper acreage, it could. So, Mr. Forth looked into this and I think came up with some suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, the highlight and strike that I provided, and I think Dave included it in the agenda. Because, you know, for the larger parcels of land and then for 2 acres, but less than 5, you know, I just increased the size. So you had up to 1,500 square feet with 15-foot sidewalls, which is more than what you would get in the smaller parcel. And then I did leave a comment in there about, just like you mentioned, although I don't recall the conversation with this gentleman, but why not allow them to combine the square footage for one larger one rather than 2 smaller ones? And it seems to make sense, you know, we could do that. You know, I could modify the language further to actually state that, where, you know, they could have, say, up to, depending upon the parcel size, you know, one building that might be equivalent to the size of 2 buildings. In this case, for the 2 to 5 acres, you know, I mean, under the proposed language in particular, they'd be allowed up to 3,000 square feet divided between 2 buildings. But then you could allow them to go, okay, well, maybe you just say, you know, up to a certain amount of square footage.
Maximum 2 buildings.
And then say this, and then maybe, you know, maximum, like you mentioned, a maximum of 2 buildings. Or something to that effect.
I did attempt to ask the county planner if they had a way of looking at their mapping program and asking the question, how many parcels are there in the RR zones that are over, I think I said 5 acres. And the query she submitted was, how many parcels are there in Onekama Township over 5 acres? So the answer she gave me was like 287, which I know there aren't 287 rural residential parcels that big. Rare that we have 120 acres. But
Well, I mean, if that's what they queried.
I don't think she,
She didn't do it.
I don't think she got her plus signs or equal signs quite in the right place. So, or else the program isn't capable of doing it.
Yeah. I could follow up with Jody.
I don't know that I'm just curious, does anybody know the background for why this was written the way it was initially?
I don't know.
Okay. I was just wondering if there was something we were missing that.
This be something where they could have a 2,000 and a 1,000 as well, like basically if we were saying. Sorry, 3,000 square feet total. Any two buildings up to one, you know what I mean, you know what I'm trying to say,
Mhm.
or does it have to be two equal or one big one? I mean, what would be the difference?
That's an interesting point if you want to make a minimum requirement for square footage.
I mean, you know, a quick and easy way is just to do an internet search of other communities, similar size, and see, I mean, you get a lot of,
Practice.
you can get a lot, yes, you can get a lot of good ideas by doing that. And looking at other communities' ordinance, so you can look at them, you know, right around this area of the county, and you can go outside the county. And, you know, get some, you know, different ways of, you know, allowing accessory buildings in terms of the size, height. You know, some communities might limit them to no larger than the ground floor area of the principal dwelling. In this case, would be a residential dwelling. Others will allow them to, you know, then if you have X amount of acres, then you can increase the total square footage of the building. Some communities might require, you know, a special land use permit, you know, if you want to go larger than that, rather than just by right. Or maybe a little bit more research is needed.
Well, we wouldn't be doing anything with this until spring anyway, so we have some time to,
I can work on it.
would you work on the querying the surrounding communities, and I'll work on the zoning administrator?
Mhm. Okay.
And see if we can get that answer and put them together and see what we come up with.
Okay.
Okay. And as we get information, we will forward it on to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put together a packet of information, Dave, and then I'll send it to you.
Okay, good.
This is a perfect time of the year to do this type of work.
The next item, is to review the sign ordinance for compliance. This came out of the citizen planner training session that, Cindy, myself, Deanna, and Gene Capper attended, for 6 Thursdays this fall. And, one of the things that, they made quite a, point of is suggesting we all look at our ordinances to make sure that we don't have a statement in our ordinance that says political signs must come down within 7 days after the election. Political signs can stay up until they rot. There is no way that you can limit free speech. And as unfortunate as we might think that is, the only thing I saw in the ordinance was, a sign over, was it 8 square feet? Requires a permit. So the big signs.
Well, and as I remember what they were talking about was the decision, I think it was a Supreme Court decision that basically a sign is a sign is a sign. So you have to make sure that you're treating all signs the same. I mean, I think Kurt used political signs as an example,
Mhm.
but just making sure that we didn't have different rules based on content of the sign.
Yeah, there was a few years ago, the US Supreme Court ruled on a case, and I can't remember the citing for the case. But it basically said that all your sign ordinances have to be content neutral.
Right.
And after the Supreme Court made a ruling on that, then we went back and whitewashed our sign code. To take out any reference to content, yes. And we worked very closely with the city attorney on it. You know, to take out references to that.
The only thing that I saw in our ordinance that possibly, we do say that event signs must be taken down within 7 days after the event.
Oh, we can't say that.
I don't know if we can,
Well, that's when you get the attorney involved in it about, okay. What, because you're right, you kind of get to that gray area of, are you regulating content or not? Is an event sign content? Because I think the way it was, you can regulate time, place, and location. And that's about it.
Well, size.
Well, yeah, and size too.
Time, place, and location.
Actually, it'd be size, because location and place are the same thing. That was my mistake.
Okay, so you're saying.
So, yeah, with that size, location, and time. So was it the township board is asking that the sign code?
No, this isn't coming from the township board. This is, I actually just wrote an email to Dave saying, hey, have we looked at our sign ordinance? Just because that was a suggestion that Kurt said is if you don't know off the top of your head, look at your sign ordinance to make sure you're in compliance.
everybody in the class just wrote it down furiously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the last time the sign ordinance had kind of was overhauled with that?
2018-19, I see amendments in there.
And yeah, that'd be about the time.
I don't think it was related to that, though. Related to. Anyway. Modified by amendment effective August 6th, 2019. Something under. This wasn't when there were issues with the Pure Court sign, was it? There was a sign erected.
29.
Says it was modified, but I don't know what was modified.
Also. Oh, that's a 6 or an 8. We also looked at it in 97.
Something that say. The sign shall pertain only to the business or activity conducted on the premise. Except for on off-premise non-commercial signs, commercial event signs.
I don't think that's content.
Different.
So do we need to ask the question?
Which question?
The question I asked at the very beginning, which I've totally forgotten now.
So we don't know if there's actually a problem out there that someone is using as an example, or is this just a check and balance?
Check and balance, because we,
Yeah, we don't know of an issue. It was for all of us to look at the ordinance.
I thought there was
and see if
something
there
in
was
here
something
about.
saw that like stuck out that it's like, well, wait a minute.
Because I can remember many 30 years ago, downstate, we had well, we took like 3 years to develop a sign ordinance. And the big thing then was, portable lighted signs. That sat in the parkway there. And, but political signs were, gotta be down within 7 days after the election. I mean, that was a no-brainer for us. And they couldn't be up more than like Labor Day. They couldn't be up before Labor Day.
How is a political sign different from an event? I mean, isn't it kind of an event?
Freedom of speech.
It's freedom of speech. So yeah, that's our only question.
I mean, again, we're talking about content. So we are judging the content?
Well, we need to ask the attorney about, are we able to say that a sign for a craft show on November 6th has to come down by, November 13th?
You said it is in here?
It is in here.
Yeah, I have to see where. It's at. Yeah.
I think if there's clauses in here that I mean, I don't think we should interpret that decision based on our ordinance. In other words, if we think there are things that would fall into that category, then I think it would make sense to send it to the attorney and just double check that those make sense to strike
In,
or change, or that they don't need to.
Section F. Community special event signs, including banner signs, are permitted in any district, subject to the following restrictions. And restriction C is such signs shall be removed within 7 days of the conclusion of the special event,
Okay.
which is being advertised.
And then under B, it looks like 5B has something too.
Well, that's size.
Says except if such sign pertains to an election or other event as defined on temporary signs, it shall be removed within 7 days after such event. So it means if it's election is okay.
Where are you reading?
5B,
5.
top of page 28, or F5B. Right below where you were.
Yeah.
On page 28.
Full stuff of it. 27, 28.
F5 and then B. The first,
Oh, okay.
so this is saying election has to come down, right?
Yes, it is.
So that we probably should.
We should probably ask Tom about 5B and about
See,
4C.
How long has he been the township attorney?
Tom Greer? I don't know.
why?
I couldn't tell you that.
Because it'd be interesting to go back. I was just seeing if you had the meeting minutes out on the webpage. Go back to 1819 and look at meeting minutes and any other information that might be available as to why and what amendments were made, because it seems to be within that timing of that Supreme Court decision. And kind of just skimming through the sign.
I was
ordinance.
here and I don't remember it
You don't.
being related to that specifically,
No.
but I might have my minutes.
Okay, because it seems, just skimming through the sign ordinance, it just seems like it's fairly content neutral.
I would agree.
Just those two things that we,
Well, I will take it on myself to send Tom Greer an email with those two sections.
Yeah, because I didn't see know what he says about political signs.
Version though is pretty intact, the whole thing. Kurt Schindler was pretty emphatic.
He was, but then again, you need to remember also, that's his interpretation also of what that decision was, so.
Mhm.
Not saying it's incorrect.
Okay, anything else for signs? Anyone? Moving on, review the setbacks for fences per the board request.
So that one I can give you a little background. So there was we took a property owner to court because of the location of their fence, okay? And we won. And so
Just kind of real briefly, I mean, just a little bit of background on that court case. I mean, what was the issue?
So the fence was in the road right away. Okay, and so within that case, not only did we prevail, but there was discussion about where it had to be placed. So the owner did finally move the fence, did not move it to the location that was talked about in court, put it in line with the front of his house and similar properties in the area. And so what
You
was
say
this?
similar properties in the area, meaning it was positioned as other properties had theirs positioned?
Well, I mean, it was in line like,
Yeah.
with the intent or the flavor of the area. So at the board level, the discussion was that the road commission is not going to enforce anything. So the board was saying, well, then why should we enforce something that the road commission is going to enforce? And then that's when the discussion came to have this group look at our setback requirements. Because again, if we have an ordinance that is being done in what we think is in line with roadway right of ways and road commission, and they're not, and they'd basically be the body that should enforce that. And they're not enforcing it, then why should we? Not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying that was the discussion on the board level to come back to this group.
But what's to stop anybody else from claiming right away?
They're not asking us to change. You're talking about enforcement?
It was basically to review our setbacks and make sure that they're appropriate.
So if we review them and they are,
It's fun.
that still leaves us in the same boat that the road commission isn't gonna do anything to help us. Then we have to take all these people at the expense of the township to court.
Well, and the other problem is if you think about what this property owner did, if he put the fence in line with the line of his house, how is that inappropriate? Or how can, I mean, do you understand? I mean, logically, it does not make sense. That you're saying that has to go back further.
When you say in line.
Yeah, what do you mean?
This house sits on Crescent Beach Road. And so it's a 66-foot wide road. And the new construction fence that they put up was within the road right of way. Within that 33 feet. They moved it back to the building line of the house. But it turns out that the house is also in the road right of way still.
Sure.
So the fence should have been set back
Even further.
even further.
Like a
And,
house.
you know, you're not, well, the house will be grandfathered, I guess. Because it's dates from the 1900s. But the I agree that I don't know if the road commission isn't gonna do anything, why should the township? But the whole thing was kind of a comedy of errors.
Yeah, just looking at this one, so you're limited to no more than 36 inches in height in the front yard. For residential parcels.
This isn't about the height, right? This is about the setback.
Right.
Would you love to ask questions
Yeah,
or just observe discussion?
we will entertain a question. That's why we're here.
Well, on topic, right? So you said it's grandfathered, right? Or the piece of the building or something super old
Mhm.
that could have been physically put there prior to the rules and regulations.
Mhm.
Can we have them like obtain a variance for what's happening in their world and maintain the setback and proper rules for everything else, even though no one's gonna enforce it? You don't want everybody doing that going forward.
Well,
How does that work?
I guess you create what you feel are reasonable, ordinances and restrictions and regulations, and you can't just say, well, yeah, that's the Miller House. They're good folks. They've done everything right so far. It'll be okay. And they live way out there. Well, now we've opened the door for everybody else in town to do exactly what you did. And we basically have just chaos. So,
So what's the task at hand then? Then you guys have to come up with if the planning rules yay or nay. I don't understand
well,
what they're asking you guys to do.
I don't know necessarily that we're being asked to do anything. I think the property owner in this case is out of town, is a seasonal resident. And, he wanted a fence for his dog. So he went, and I'm just making up some of this stuff because I don't know firsthand.
Just to help me figure out the story.
So he went to the big box store and he says, I want to buy this fence. And you know anybody who can install it? And of course, the big box stores have lists of contractors, and the contractor jumps up and says, I can do that. I'll take care of everything. You just go back home. And this guy says, great, I can come up in the spring and I'll have a great fence yard for my dog. Well, the contractor cuts a few corners. And
And that brings us to.
and gets the land use permit based on his little sketches. And, I think there's some, questioning on the zoning administrators to how much oversight they gave to that application. Because if the zoning administrator had come out and inspected the property with the application, they would have seen what the problem was. The zoning administrator saw the problem when it was reported that the fence was done and they were closing out the permit.
Okay.
And in closing out the permit, they did an inspection to see that there really was a fence put up. And they said, oh, this is in the wrong place. I mean,
They should move it, right? And they did move it,
they did move it.
but it's still, things are still not all, comedy of errors. One error leads to another. Okay, I see where we are. Thank you. Ooh.
What is the setback? I'm reading.
Can I throw in just one other observation?
Sure, Dan.
I mean, I looked at this just a little bit. I mean, if you look at you're probably very familiar with the different plats of Red Park. And so there's one, like, I think it's supervisor's plat in 1920. Then for some reason, about 4 years later, then there's an assessor's plat. There's a huge difference between those two plats, which I have no explanation for. On the older plat, the Wigwam Cottage, which is now the Hucks, was well outside of that road right away. The more recent 1924 plat, like now it's, the road's like been moved towards their cottage, 30, 40 feet, so. I mean, the whole situation is not atypical for an income township with all these plats and surveys, so. I mean,
And I'd say even,
I don't think.
not
there's-
just even on Yakima Township, I think there's a lot of that surveying issues throughout our entire county.
And state.
Well, right,
I guess the lesson that I would take from this is that if you're planning to build something up here, be here. Be here and be in charge. Don't just say, I want this, oh, can you take care of it? Because I'm going away. You know, that's. You have some responsibility for what that builder does.
Well, ultimately, it's the property owner's responsibility, you're right. To know where the property lines are, especially if they're building something or erecting something at or near the property line. In this case, it ended up being, you know, outside of the property line. But to Beta's point, yeah, looking through the fence ordinance, it doesn't specify any setback distance
I
for
know.
the fence, other than it does say if you're gonna erect an 8-foot high fence, you have to do it within the building envelope. And other than that, the way I read it is that you can erect a fence as long as it's the correct height and the correct type,
anywhere,
as long as it's on your property.
Right.
Mhm.
So that means 66 feet. Right, 33.
Well, yeah, you'd have to, yeah, if you take it, assuming that the pavement is centered within the right of way, it'd be 33 feet from the
33
center
feet.
line.
You can
Right.
put your fence.
Right.
Well, again, one survey has their house like on their property.
Mhm.
The more recent 1924 survey says their house is not on their.
And there's other homes that have fences located where he has relocated his fence.
So the most recent survey was 1924. I would say it might be due to.
I didn't
You mean
survey,
plat.
Plat,
Plat, okay.
plat map.
So when you,
Precedents.
when you have a survey done before you start to build, what do they compare that to? Make sure it's in check and balance and equal and agrees with what's on record? Or do they just take the flags in the ground and go to town?
Well, they were, Spicer works off, a point of beginning. That almost, like in Red Park, almost all the properties there are described, commencing at a point of beginning, which is up Miller Road. And then it gets down into the park and it starts coming around.
On the Spicer survey on the second page of his recent survey, he has a note that he has no explanation for why the road was moved. So, I mean, this is
yeah, and I've seen that.
incredibly complicated and it could get incredible. I've already spent 10 grand on this case.
Right, and I mean, I think that's what the township board's at saying. Why are we gonna continue to pursue this?
Yeah, and I don't think you wanna modify the zoning ordinance to say something like, you can be in the road right of way as long as it's in line with your house. I mean,
Right,
it's
but
not
I
a good
think,
idea either.
no, but I think the board asked for this to be reviewed, just,
Yeah,
but it's actually fairly silent about,
If I was gonna do anything, I would write a letter to the zoning administrator and say, please be very cognizant of when you get requests to build anything that inspections are done ahead of time to make sure that the structure, fence, whatever, is being put where it is legal to put it.
But it seems like if the house is there, even though the house is in the road, you should be able to put a fence.
well, it's more like. the
Lined up
road's
with your
in
house.
town, is My perspective.
What?
The road, it's more like the road is
Road's in-
encroached on the
Right.
house.
I mean, if
Is what's
everyone
happening
else
now.
has it next to the house.
But you know, Dave, to your point, I mean, this came up previous board meetings with the zoning administrator. You know, to what extent, under what circumstances should surveys be required? You know, I remember Ed Bradford you know, was tilting toward the side like almost always. And this is kind of an example of why.
Well,
As a real estate broker and developer for 38 years, I would never do anything without a survey. But people,
Well, in defense of the zoning
Typically do that.
administrator, I mean, in this case with the fence, unless those property lines are staked in the field, they can come out and inspect it, but if they don't know where those property lines are, there's really nothing they can do. And again, it gets back to the owner's responsibility that, okay, you're gonna have a contractor come out here, you're gonna have an erected fence. The contractor should have said, okay, you need to stake your property line, so I know where to put the fence. You know, I mean, you just, you
But in
can't,
this case, theoretically, you couldn't even put the fence up because the house is encroaching on the road, right?
then they should have set the fence back. Beyond the front plane of the house is what they should have done.
You think?
Because it's not their property to erect a structure that's out in the right of way. In this case, it would be, why would it be any different for me than erecting a fence on my neighbor's property?
I don't know. I don't know. It's just that with the road has changed, it's just more complicated, but.
Yeah,
but the road's where it is.
right.
And there's a double yellow line down the road. And in between that double yellow line, there's a center point, and 33 feet that way is theirs. And I don't really care whether it's 1920 or 1924 or 1960, it's still 33 feet. And that's not gonna change. So,
Yeah, again, I mean, assuming that road is centered in the right of way.
so,
Right, because it could be on north or
Because
south.
they will meander.
Yeah.
to review it.
We reviewed
Did
it.
we review? No? I feel more educated.
I'd say we
well, yeah, again,
I mean, to Chris's point, or maybe it's one you just made. If in fact we were talking about the fence and it was on a neighbor's property, let's just use that as an example because the survey wasn't done. Even with the debacle with the plats being different. If the survey was done and you were encroaching on a neighbor's property, unless you had an adverse possession claim, you'd have to move it.
Mhm.
I mean, you would
Yeah,
have
you
to
would.
move it, whether it was logical or whatever. But I also understand board's position on this one about not wanting to continue to pursue this in court when the governing body of that setback should be dealing with it and they won't enforce it. So we have like no support.
I mean,
from-
what would be gained by making him move the fence, if I understand this, from lining up with the front of his house to lining up 10 feet back or whatever? What would be gained as far as road commission?
The gaining of it would be, he would be putting the fence on
his property.
his property. Not in the road right away, but however we're gonna define
I
his
don't know the
property.
basis of the road, just the road commission's decision on this, but I know they have a new attorney, Bill Hand. He's basically the top road attorney in the state of Michigan, so I presume they consulted with him. And he probably just told them this would just be a very complicated mess and just not worth it.
Well,
Yeah,
I-
and that I'm not
I
privy
mean,
to,
the
and I
new
don't know.
road manager, Brad Kozinski's really on top of stuff, and he knows this road laws, and and he's prone to enforce things.
I guess I would like to suggest that we encourage the zoning administrator to be very vigilant in their examining applications for construction. And if, I know the township board went through his survey required, if they have questions, they should be able to require a survey. If they don't have questions, and they can just do it visually. But at least they will have examined the property before anything, before the shovels hit the ground. I think we owe that much to the avoidance of situations like this. So,
You know, as a public road agency, and if this attorney is as sharp as what you say he is, I'm sure they have a boilerplate agreement that would allow these types of structures to remain in the right of way. And there's an acknowledgement that the road agency knows it's there. And if it ever has to be moved, then it's the property owner, because then other structures, this may not be a liability for the road agencies, but other structures might be, you know, there might be an indemnification clause in there. And that's something that I was with that road agency, that's what I would require this property owner to do. And we'd even draft it and give it to him to sign it.
all right. We received, notice from the zoning administrator about accessory building definitions. And that was in Article 5, Section 503. And I guess I didn't see the conflict, but I sent you that page of the ordinance.
So what, okay, so what is the zoning administrator saying?
She said that there was a conflict between A and B.
Because I didn't see the letter from the zoning administrator on that. Unless I missed it.
No, you didn't.
I wasn't
Is
quite
this the
sure.
one that you sent that was all highlighted and all the trailers and? That was highlighted like that.
Zoning administrator received a call about somebody who wanted to put a caboose on their property. It hasn't happened, so we don't have to worry about it. But she reviewed the ordinance language and noticed some discrepancies in 503's definition of accessory structures. I've attached 3 conflicting definitions for your reference, and
Oh,
that's what it is.
because I noticed that one, it seemed like it was the opposite when I was reading it, so the other ones are saying.
So yes, that's,
So she didn't rewrite it, she just highlighted the things that are discrepant.
which are,
You mean, it didn't.
it
It has to do with the recreational vehicle sentence at the end of each one
at
of
the
them.
end of it, recreational vehicles and travel trailers which are not clearly permanent and are easily removed are not considered accessory structures. Seems reasonable. Recreational, and then the next section, recreational vehicles and travel trailers. They're still not considered accessory structures. And then finally, a non-permanent structure or easily removable structure such as a tent, travel trailer, recreational vehicle shall be considered as accessory structures for the purpose of this ordinance. That seems like a,
It does.
I didn't quite understand that one. I wanted to go further.
a non-permanent structure or easily removable structure such as a tent, travel trailers, recreational vehicles, or similar structure shall be considered as an accessory structure for the purpose of this ordinance. When above, they were not considered accessory
Right.
structures.
But I'm not seeing that in here,
I'm not either, that's,
in the
so I
original.
wasn't sure where that third portion was that you're reading.
That's why I wasn't sure. I thought the highlighted was something that she had added, so I
don't know where she got that.
the one, the bottom one,
No, I'm just saying,
it's here. I mean, I was reading along with you.
yeah, but where's
Here's
where's
one.
this section principal structure?
Here's one.
Where's this paragraph?
Principal structure. Yeah, I don't see that.
Yeah, it's under
She's-
under the list of definitions, it's under P instead of A, so principal structure.
Oh, she, in another
So
section.
she cut and pasted it.
Ah,
So it does say, under the zoning code, it does say a non-permanent structure or easily removable structure such as a tent, travel shall be considered as accessory structures for the purpose of this ordinance. So yeah,
In the,
Definitions.
that's in the definitions,
under P.
under P, yes.
I got you.
So it sounds like perhaps principal, the definition of principal structure is the one that needs to be amended. Maybe something as simple as just making it consistent with the language in the accessory structure and accessory building.
But again, I don't understand why it isn't.
It sounds like the word not is missing.
Right.
That's all.
I had a typo in there somewhere.
Yeah, it just, it doesn't make sense.
It's, yeah, under principal structure, it says shall be considered as accessory structures. Because after Dan mentioned the word not, I went back to look at it and see maybe where we
Yeah,
could simply
and
insert
that's-
the word not.
That's what she sent here.
Shall
And I circled
not,
it.
shall not be considered.
And that
Accessories.
doesn't make sense.
So maybe, yeah, right, maybe they just simply
Do you wanna
omitted the
add
word not.
To clarify.
So, because it's just, or similar structures, right now it says shall be considered, and we could simply say shall not be considered.
That change you're suggesting is in the definitions.
mhm. And just to confuse the issue, how do you define and I would almost call this a tent. You can buy these pole structures that take a, giant tarp.
There's
over.
measurements here that says if it exceeds 144 square feet or 8 foot tall, then it, even if it's 10, it becomes.
Accessory
Yeah.
structure, because from that, it would,
When I read it, not limited to 10
Yeah, if it's 144 square feet,
it's a garden shed.
or 8 feet tall, then
then you're
it
saying it's an
becomes
accessory.
accessory.
Okay,
If it's smaller than that, then it doesn't.
all right.
That's how I read it.
And I think Chris language you read just said 10 general, right?
Yeah, it just says tent.
Yeah.
And then if you go to the definition of structure, it says anything constructed or erected which requires permanent location to the ground. So clearly like a travel trailer or tent, I mean, that's a permanent location to the ground.
So what about a tent where you have a slab that fits the size?
Is it permanent, the tent to the slab?
I mean, that's what I'm wondering, if that's what this is trying to get at, calling it an accessory structure, like I think of, you know, if you think of something like at Manistee National, where they actually use that.
Yeah, or was it Catch-22 of Arcadia,
Mhm.
where, yeah, it's a. One could argue
That
that,
is permanent,
one could argue that it's kind of a
but this specific says non-permanent structure or easily removable structure such as shall be. To me, it probably should say shall not be. You're gonna talk to Jody.
I'm gonna talk to
right?
Jody and see if that will solve her dilemma.
Well, and I think that shall not be, the only thing I'm questioning is 10, because of further explanation under accessory structure. If we did the shall not,
Yeah. Not sure what they meant for tent. I mean,
I mean, you could add subject to, you know, the restrictions or 144 square foot, 8 foot. See accessory structure definition.
Chris, would you mind reading those again under,
Do you wanna,
which ones do you want?
it's the bottom one is the
Oh.
one. Cause the two upper ones both do include the 144 square foot. and 8 foot.
right, that, yeah,
In the back or the front.
yeah, it's interesting that under principal structure, tents added,
Yeah, so,
but yet in accessory building, tent is not included with recreational vehicles, tractor trailers. I mean, it almost seems like if you took tent out of the principal structure, then it would be consistent with what's under the accessory building. Well, Paul still said shall, she didn't.
If you took out tent, that shall not be.
Right. That's what I'm trying to
But
say.
there's also,
Because tent's the thing that's making the shall not be on that. Sounds like it's going to contradict this.
Okay. Another question for Jody. All right,
But it does seem like not, the word not was missing.
you know, yeah, it's just, I'm reading it again under principal structure, and it just says a non-permanent structure. And the definition of structure has it's permanent, attachment to the ground. Or easily removable structures such as a tent or a travel trailer and recreational vehicles. Well, those aren't structures.
must have been an issue at some point,
Yeah.
you know.
the village tried to, they got into a spat over the Blue Slipper here when they had food trucks there all the time.
Mhm.
And they said, well, they've already got this whole barn out here that as an accessory structure. And now they're bringing all these food trucks in as more accessory structures. And Meister was in the audience and he said, I've never seen an accessory building with wheels.
Yeah.
All right, next item. A resident, wanted to put up a storage building and wanted to make some sleeping space, bunk style sleeping space on the second, on the loft area. And, Mr. Darple's letter, he wrote the current requirement of 800 minimum square feet, is, understandable, but doesn't want to put a building up. The second floor wouldn't be 800 square feet, so that's his issue, and he's sent along some drawings. He has quite a bit of experience in planning and zoning downstate, so he's just a little confused by what we're trying to do. 15-acre parcel.
Well, he wants to do 450 square feet, if I look at his floor plan correctly. And to me, looking at the floor plan, what he's got is a studio apartment. Because I mean, studio apartments usually range between 350 and 600 square feet is what I read. And he's kind of somewhere in the middle there, 450.
I didn't see the plans that you're referring to. I only printed this, I guess. And so you talk about a larger building with a smaller living area, correct?
Yeah, on second floor.
Yes, I mean, that's
And
kind
you can't just call the rest of the building unfinished? How does that?
Well, I mean, it's basically just what he wants is he's got an accessory building and he wants to put like a loft apartment. And it's kind of a studio apartment.
I guess I'm wondering, is that subject to the 800 square foot? If it's inside a building that's larger?
I guess I'd have to look at the definition of an accessory dwelling unit. It's in the zoning code, but it's kind of like form-based zoning. I mean, you got an accessory building there and for all intents is, nobody would know that there's a studio type apartment in it. If he meets building code requirements for livable, habitable space.
I thought the 800 square foot was more to ensure that you have at least that size of a building, not necessarily that there's that size of living inside a larger building, but that could get clarified.
It's,
So do you think it's in here? What are dwellings?
Yeah, I didn't see a definition for an accessory dwelling in it.
Location of accessory buildings, tenant only.
Also second dwelling on parcel.
Where are you at?
It'd be on page 32 of the zoning code.
Under, 1018.
Yes.
Minimum 800 square feet above grade, ground floor, conditioned living space. So how do you define that? With a core living area of not less than 20 feet by 20 feet. What is conditioned living space?
Well, let's see if there's a definition for conditioned living space.
not defined.
So what he wants to do wouldn't meet the requirements for, any team.
Okay, that also came up since we're looking at 1018, and I don't know if this is new, if I should bring it up at the time, but under B, 1018B, One, came to my attention during our training that we are here to, more define how the land use, not what happens inside the house. And on, 1018B1, it indicates that occupancy shall be limited to adult members of the extended family. I feel like we should look at that and consider, updating that. I don't think that,
That would be a good question for the attorney.
yeah,
There's been a lot of case law on principal, we talked about the principal residence exemption, all that language on the guest house. That would,
it's under the guest house.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of more recent case law on principal residence exemptions, which basically make those provisions in our ordinance unlawful.
Right, yeah, I would love to see that. Yeah. I specifically asked a question about it, you know, and we can't dictate what happens inside. We can only say how they can build.
So in this case, what this guy's asking for falls into that.
Well, it falls under, I mean, I'm not sure what this condition is.
I think they just want, oh, the conditions, I don't know. I'm not quite sure what that is.
I mean, it sounds like it's more than 800 square feet. So I just don't understand the conditioned living space, the core living area, not less than, well, is it 20 by 20? How big is the,
His proposal is 15 by 30.
so that's 20 by 20, right?
Well, that would be the entire area. So the conditioned living space, what is it? Core living area, like the living room, dining area?
I think this still goes back to the exterior. You know, making sure that the actual building is large enough, not the living space inside the building. Are you looking at 1018A3 there?
Mhm. I think the conditioned living space, the core living area, not less than 20 by 20. I think that's the, kind of like, must be like the living room.
I think they want to make sure it wasn't a trailer, single wide,
Mhm.
so having 20 by 20, because that was, right? Yeah, you're nodding your head. So that doesn't really have implications
Like a
on this.
minimum
particular-
dimension 20. That's-
Yeah.
That's how I always.
But that's the building size, the exterior. I don't know that the inside. If he wants to have a smaller apartment inside.
If you're gonna live in it, it's gotta be at least, depending on the zone, it's gotta be at least 800 square.
For living or just for the,
For the
size of the
footprint,
building.
For the footprint.
but this building exceeds that. It's just the upper little area is 400 where he wants to build.
It would have to be at least 20 by 20.
How would we find out?
I think that 20 by 20 is your livable space inside there, because, you know, that's only 400 square feet. Whereas the minimum square footage, you know, footprint's 800.
And his building's only 6.
Oh, the whole building's only 600?
It's 21 by 30.
Oh, I thought the building was,
That was 27.
I thought the building was, met the 800. I thought it was a large building that he wanted to put a little, I thought he was talking about 1,200 square foot.
No, it's 21. It's 21.
It's 810.
It's 21 by 30. No, 27. by 30.
Oh, 27. No,
So how big is that?
So the footprint is 800,
810.
810.
So it just makes,
Yep,
so the
The
footprint's
studio.
fine.
it's just the studio portion does not fit the 20 by 20.
No, I don't think the footprint's fine, because the livable space, the residential unit has to be at least 800 square feet.
Isn't, I think you said it was 810.
Well, the total square footage of the accessory building, yes. But the accessory dwelling unit is, I think, 450. So I think it's, you probably have to differentiate between the accessory building, because he's got a garage below, and he's gonna use for storage and, you know, vehicles and whatever else. So that's not a residential unit. The only, the residential unit is what's on that second floor, for the loft area, if that's what it is.
And that needs to be 20 by 20.
Well, under the ordinance, no, it has to be for an accessory dwelling unit. Well, it doesn't even meet the definition of the accessory dwelling, because that's at 800 square feet of ground floor area.
Right,
So it doesn't even meet that definition. It's something.
the building does, because the
The
garage is
building
that
does,
big.
yes. The
So
garage.
the question is, can you have a smaller, and the question would be, is the 800 square feet more about just ensuring that you don't have small buildings, or is it really the
Yeah.
living area
I mean,
in the building?
I think the 20 by 20 is the living area inside.
I think that was intended so that you didn't do a single wide trailer.
That'd be considered like a
I-
bonus room.
I can remember Jim saying that as well, and you're saying yes. So that's more about the exterior of it and to prevent single wide trailers, because 20 by 20,
Because they're only gonna be about 12 to 14.
right? So I don't know that it really matters what size the living is inside of the building. It's more about the size of the exterior of the building, which sounds like it's big enough.
And I'm not quite sure how they would define core living area then,
Right.
so.
I think it's whatever doesn't include garage or porch or
Overhangs or.
overhangs, that type of stuff.
Well, I'm gonna ask Jody
That's
about
what
it.
would be in my mind.
I'm not opposed to an apartment inside a larger building personally, but
Oh, neither am I.
That's not considered a bonus room. I mean,
what's a bonus room?
bonus room is the living quarters in the garage. People build bonus
The
rooms.
whole carriage house thing with, no,
Bonus rooms are also like a second family room in like residential homes.
But we don't,
Phone.
if we don't enumerate it in here, it isn't. Not allowed. And we don't talk about bonus rooms.
I've never heard of a bonus room.
I've heard the term, but I,
I think bonus rooms might be,
Typically,
on the second floor, you might have like, 3 or 4 bedrooms and you have they call it, bonus room.
A den?
Could be a den, could be,
Yeah.
could be a separate, like family room or, or a game
a
room.
lot of people put bonus rooms up in the garage.
Well, wouldn't that be fancy to have a bonus room that has plumbing, you know?
It's for your, they call them in-law suites too.
Yeah, mother-in-law
Yeah.
cottage or whatever, huh?
well,
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'd wanna know why they couldn't.
I'm gonna ask Jody some questions about that.
She should come to this meeting.
Last item on the, I added PPI on there. And I know that the township board is interested in finding out what's going on with PPI, aren't we all? And I'm beginning to wonder what to do with PPI. There's, they just tore down the casino,
Oh, they did.
and, they should have gotten a demolition permit to do it. But I can't see anything in this special use permit that they're operating under that says they can't make things go away. If they want to do anything with that space, then they're certainly gonna have to come to us. Because that'll be a major amendment to the special use permit. But there are many things wrong with the current special use permit. And a lot of it hangs its hat on the availability for a sewer system, which Bob Gazan is working on. I don't know how diligently he's working on it, but he is working on it. And, I guess, we have options. We could just rewrite a special use permit, and make it, better fit reality. And, we could,
It's
We-
still active.
it's still active, but, there's a lot in it that isn't, active, so. Anyone other than me have any thoughts about Portage Point Inn?
Is it tied up in a lawsuit?
There's still a lawsuit out there, which, um, bothers me because it's just means that there's lawyers out there with the meter running. And really, nothing's happening, but it's, I'm sure it's still open on a couple lawyers' timesheets.
Yeah, they do it, they have it's a temporary injunction, is my
Yeah.
understanding. And
Yeah.
every year, the temporary injunction. is extended
Gets
for every
re-signed,
year.
yeah.
That's what's happening.
But, given the changes that are occurring out there, I'm not sure that the temporary injunction, has a reason for being. So. If,
When was the last time was the meeting held with Kazan to, talk about all the issues out there, future plans?
September,
Last
that's when we met out there.
Okay, so it hasn't been that long.
Cindy, Dave Meister, and myself met with Bob Gazan and Duncan, and to talk about what's going on.
Okay.
So,
So is anything different than,
Which there wasn't much conversation about what's going on.
okay,
but you know, I sort of feel like we need to let Mr. Gazan know that, we need to get this special use permit. It's 8 years old now. The amendment's 8 years old, the special use permit's 10, 11. And nothing's happening. Other than a building went away.
Were there time limits associated with certain projects that he committed to doing out there?
There was, and that's one of the major stumbling blocks for some of the community, that there really wasn't any timeline put on this, and there were kind of, I don't know what to call them, kind of escape clauses for him if things didn't go right, if economic conditions did this, then, well, then we'll just have to, things could take longer. Well, it's been a lot longer than longer.
my recollection was though that he needed that whole package in order for it to be viable, and it sounds to me like the whole package has been halted by the lawsuits. As far as having the marina and, being able to, in the boat barn and all that, being able to support the business. So there are probably reasons why it hasn't progressed.
He can't do, as Dave said, without the sewer or some other, of his wastewater treatment facility of his own, he just really, whoever owns it can't really do much of anything other than maintain it.
The latest information that I have from Bob, I spoke to him 3 days ago, is he has, Nordland is his engineering firm that he uses, and he has received engineering drawings from Nordland for the construction of a private sewer out to the ball field. But he would still like to pursue the option of attaching to the village. And I don't know the village's position on that at all, whether, and what it would take for the village to allow that. And Bob is aware of their capacity issues, and he said to me, if they said, but we'd have to do a big dollar amount to be able to allow that. He said, I might even put up the money to do that. He's looking for a solution, and So, I just like to kind of keep his motor running and get him to make a decision so we can move forward with this. And so he can move forward.
I'd like to see him connected to sanitary sewer. And then if you have to install it down Portage Point Inn all the way to the village, my guess is probably gonna be a force main. But there were, back in my day, if a developer put in a sanitary sewer system and they had to extend it a certain amount of distance, and that sewer became available to other users that are now adjacent to that sewer line, there was a payback agreement, meaning that when other people connect to that sewer line that developer just paid, that developer is paid back for a certain amount for connecting to the sewer that he paid for.
Mhm.
Would be, you know, and I don't think it's in place now, but, you know, there could be an ordinance adopted that would require that if a sanitary sewer is deemed available to your property, you have X amount of months to connect.
No, that's already, that's public health law. If there's a public sewer, if it's within 200 feet of your property, you have to connect it with like 18 months or something. You know, Dave Meister like worked on this like really hard. 2014, 15, trying to get the connection to the village, and there was, I don't know what happened, but there was grant money lined up and all kinds of things. That's very busy.
Well,
So what do you want to do?
I want to just keep in touch with Bob Gazan and keep asking him, what's the update for today? Because he's aware of the fact that the village has sort of new leadership, and maybe that will change the climate to the village. I don't know. It's not going to change the condition of the sewer system probably, but
No, but I think it's worth investigating
it's
again.
worth asking the question.
Yeah.
So,
The village has a lot of land. I mean, you probably know this by now. The finishing lagoon, like up where, I can't remember, it's up towards Bear Lake. I mean, you've got like another 100 acres up there. So the potential space, to expand lagoons and all that seems like it's there. What it would cost, who's gonna pay for it.
well, so that's where we are.
It's not just the lagoons, it's the pipe sizing too, because those pipes can only flow so much.
And they leak.
Point of clarification, you said you wanted to contact Bob or you're going? to
I'm
contact-
going to continue to contact Bob Gazan.
Okay.
Track him down whatever country he's in.
Can I just ask Dave, you said there was this is just general information, the requirement for a demolition permit, is that like from, Katie and Jody or?
Yeah.
Yeah,
$10.
is that, I'm just curious, that's in the zoning ordinance or is it some other? I'm just curious.
It's not in our zoning ordinance that I know of,
Yeah.
but it's in the zoning administrator's toolkit.
That might be a building code requirement too, because there are issues when you tear down those old buildings.
Probably
Asbestos and all that.
Mhm.
Maybe it's a state permit or something.
So we are back to public comment. Anyone in the audience, anything to add? Sir?
Mr. Stafford, you've been sitting here quiet all along.
Yeah, just observing.
You're from the
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce.
Yep, Director of
I knew
Economic
that.
Development. So the Portage Point Inn was an interesting, great conversation, and I had a conversation or two with Bob, but nothing past that. I know Mark Miller, my predecessor, put some time into trying to figure out the infrastructure problem, and I don't think he got very far, so I think a concerted effort's probably needed in that regard, where you bring in all the players in the county to actually make that happen and show some type of solidarity, with USDA or some other bigger funding source to make that project viable at the end of the day.
Check the notes on the Two Lakes Collaborative Sewer Authority. That's exactly where I wondered.
And I will confirm with Jody, that she's aware of the two dollhouses that were listed being for sale and could be torn down and rebuilt even bigger than before, which is totally false. But, you know, if she wants to let, whoever the real estate people, is that Jeff Sternberger? Let him know that there's going to have to be a little modification to his brochure. That's needed. Anything else from other commissioners?
I just was wondering about. I had sent an email, but
Oh, yes.
the House bill, just that maybe we could confirm that we're in.
There is a bill that passed the House, about,
I think we did.
Oh, it's a public act now.
yeah, it's a public act now, but it doesn't take effect for 90 days.
Yeah.
It just indicates that in our master plan, we need to, plan for a range of housing types, cost, affordability, attainability, ages, and other characteristics, including single and multifamily dwellings to serve the housing diverse population. So, and we may be fine,
Well, that's something we have to.
but it would be good to just confirm that we're in compliance
Mhm. Mhm.
for the spring.
For the spring. Good. Seeing no other business, this meeting is adjourned at 8:28.
It's warm in here.
Merry Christmas and.
Yeah.
Well.
It was very informative. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.